Good evening, everyone. This today we're going to read two stories. One is about a bored bear, and the second one is about feeling lonely. Let's get right on to the first book, Totally Bored Boris, written and illustrated by Hans Willem. Boris had played with all of his toys. He had read all of his books. But now he didn't know what to do next. He thought and thought, but he could think of nothing to do. Boris was totally bored. Finally, Boris got up and went to his father. He tooted his trumpet and said, "Let's do something." "I am doing something," said his father. "I'm busy painting. Why don't you go fishing?" "Fishing is no fun to do alone," said Boris. "Please do something with me." "I can't right now," said his father. "Why don't you read a book?" "I'm tired of my books," replied Boris. Boris hoped that his mother would do something with him. "I'd love to," said his mother, "but I promised your little sister I'd bake some cookies with her. Why don't you help us?" "No, no, no," cried Boris. "I hate my sister and I hate baking cookies." And he stomped back to his room. Boris could hear happy noises coming from the kitchen. The chattering and laughing made him feel even worse. He decided to go to his tree house. "Maybe there's something to play with there," he said. He took his trumpet with him, just in case there wasn't. But as soon as Boris had climbed up the tree, he saw that there was nothing to do. It was as boring as being back in his room. "What can I do? What can I do?" he asked himself over and over and over again. There were lots of things he didn't want to do, but nothing that he really wanted to do. Suddenly, a huge cardboard box came walking by. From inside came the voice of Boris's sister chanting, "I'm on my way to build a castle, but no one will know where it is. It's a secret." From his tree, Boris could see exactly where she was going. "Building a castle?" he thought. "What a boring idea! If I had that box, I'd make a spaceship out of it." He kept watching as his sister and her friends began their work. Soon, Boris saw everyone pasting cutouts and buttons on the castle and painting pictures on the walls. Boris knew what he would have done instead. A spaceship would need rockets and aerials and lots of other things. But then he remembered that he was much too bored to do anything anyway. The next thing Boris saw was his sister and her friends carrying streamers and crepe paper. I guess they're going to have a party, Boris thought. So what? I hate parties. But he kept watching them from his tree. Mother gave us all her old jewelry and clothes to play dress up. His little sister had said very loudly as she passed under Boris's tree a few minutes later. I'll be a princess, but you won't see it, she added. Of course he would see it, Boris thought to himself, and he acted as if he weren't even interested. The dressing up sounded very noisy and cheerful. Boris imagined what he would dress up as. If it were his party, a spaceman or even an alien from a strange planet. But then Boris saw that the others were having a good time anyway. That made him feel more out of sorts than ever. When they posed so the princess could take a snapshot, Boris threw twigs down at them. But they were having too good a time to notice. Then his sister said to her friends, Now let's have a party. Oh no, I mean a royal feast. Remembering that she was now a princess, she walked proudly by Boris's tree again. This time carrying a bowl filled with warm cookies. The sweet smell of the freshly baked cookies drifted up to Boris's treehouse. The pitcher of juice made him feel thirsty, but nobody paid any attention to him. They were too busy laughing, eating, and having a good time together. This is too much, said Boris. Boris couldn't bear it any longer. He picked up his trumpet and blew it as loud as he could. Bwah! Then again and again. Bwah! Bwah! When he stopped, there was silence. There was no talking or giggling. The trumpet noise had worked. It had put an end to their silly fun and stupid party. Boris felt very pleased with himself, but suddenly he heard his name called from below. Boris, a trumpeter is just what a royal feast needs, called one of the guests. How about it? Will you be the king's trumpeter? Boris was about to say something very rude, but then he thought for a moment and said, Maybe I could be a trumpeter, but I'll only do it if I get 20 cookies. How about 3? Asked his sister, looking at the almost empty bowl. Okay, said Boris, that's a fair price, and he climbed down from the tree. The party turned out to be a fantastic one. The trumpeter trumpeted, the king drummed, the royal court danced, and Boris forgot all about his boredom and nothing to do's. But he did not forget about the cookies which the princess had saved specially for him. The end. I hope you like the lovely story of how Boris killed his boredom by eventually playing with his sister, and how his sister killed her boredom by imagining she's a princess in a castle. That's lovely. So, what you kids have to do is imagine every day is a new day, and imagine yourselves prince and princesses in a castle, or imagine yourselves as kings and queens. You can imagine yourselves as floating in space and meeting aliens, and you could just, let your imagination wild run. And let us know later in the comments what you imagine to be. Moving on to our next story, we have Never Lonely Again. Again, written and illustrated by Hans Willem. One morning, Chestnut stayed in bed longer than usual. He didn't feel like getting up. There was nothing for him to do. And worst of all, he had no friends to play with. I might as well keep on sleeping, he thought to himself, when suddenly his whole house began to move and shake. An earthquake, Chestnut thought, and as wide awake right away. But it was no earthquake. It was only Morris the otter who was playing with a branch of Chestnut's tree. Are you crazy? Chestnut asked furiously. Making such a rattle this early in the day? What's the matter? Replied Morris. Why can't you come out and play? Pooh, said Chestnut, who didn't want Morris to know that he had no friends to play with. I think I know what your problem is, said Morris as he dried his coat. You are just bored with your own company. That happens to all of us at times. Have you ever wondered why we otters are always so happy? Continued Morris. It's because every new day we have to make one new friend. Then you must have hundreds of friends, Chestnut asked skeptically. Oh, maybe even more than that, said Morris. Come along, I'll show you some of my pals. Chestnut didn't believe Morris for a moment, but he was curious enough to go along with him. Look here, there are some of my friends, said Morris, and he jumped into the middle of a patch of flowers. But these are just dumb flowers, cried Chestnut. They're not friends. Why not? Aren't they lovely with their nice smell? Look at them. They all seem to smile at us. Someone who smiles at me is my friend, insisted Morris. Now let's try to catch a butterfly, Morris said. They can be very tricky friends. Chestnut still thought Morris was silly, but he liked catching butterflies. Whenever Morris caught a butterfly, he immediately set it free again. We can't keep a friend locked up, he said, laughing. Then Morris pointed to a row of rocks leading across the river. These friends are more fun than a bridge. Chestnut wasn't quite sure. Chestnut jumped from one stone to stone. He had nearly made it to the other side of the river when he slipped and fell into the water. As he climbed to the shore with his coat and tail dripping, Chestnut said angrily, "I guess the water is also one of your friends." "Of course," Morris said with a laugh. "No reason to be upset. Water can be fun. Come, watch me." "I love water," said Morris. "It cools and tickles me all over." Now Chestnut had to laugh. He felt a little silly for having been so clumsy. After Morris finished his shower, both of them were dripping wet. They shook off some of the water, and then Morris ran up the hill and opened his arms wide. "Now let my friends the wind dry our coats." And in no time they were dry again. "Let's lie down in the sun over there," said Morris. The warm sunshine felt good on their bellies. "I guess the sun is also a friend to have," thought Chestnut, but he didn't say anything to Morris. "I'm getting hungry," Morris said after a while. This time it was Chestnut who said, "Come with me. I know someone who'll give us something to eat." "You mean a friend?" "You bet," laughed Chestnut, and off they ran. Chestnut showed Morris an apple tree full of ripe red apples. "I like your friend," said Morris. "And so do I," replied Chestnut. Then they watched the different clouds going by. The sun was getting low, and it was time for them to return home. "Have you already made your new friend for the day?" Chestnut asked shyly. "No, I haven't," replied Morris. "I forgot all about it. We have just been too busy." Then he smiled and added, "But how about you? Would you like to be my new friend?" Chestnut liked that idea very much. As they paddled home together, he held tight to Morris. Then the two friends said good night to each other. "I'll see you in the morning," said Morris. "I still want you to meet my friends, the bears, the rabbits, and the raccoons." And with that, he disappeared in the water. That night, Chestnut went to bed early. He set his alarm clock to make sure he wouldn't oversleep the next morning. After all, he couldn't disappoint all the friends who would be waiting for him. The end. I hope you all enjoyed that lovely story of how Chestnut made how Morris showed Chestnut how he can make anybody his friends, and how you need to have an open heart and an open mind to make new friends. Thank you so much once again for tuning in for this story week. Stay tuned for more updates from our end. Until then, take care, stay home, stay safe, and wash hands. Have a good evening ahead. Thank you.